You're listening to the Birth Matters Podcast, episode 110.
Sandy and I, we started out in birth class at the public hospital, and we just left there feeling very sterile, very unsupported, someone said that those hospital classes, they just teach you how to be good patients and make things easier for the doctors and nurses, right? We felt very disempowered, actually. And Sandy got on the horn and said, let me go find another class. And Sandy's the one who did the research and found your class. Yeah. And we're so glad that we did. We just felt very supported and nurtured. It was a confidence builder. We had the skills, we had the techniques, we had the ability to do this the way that we wanted. We would never have gotten that from the hospital class at all.
Hey there, and welcome to the Birth Matters Show. I'm your host, Lisa Graves Taylor, founder of Birth Matters NYC and director of East River Doula Collective. I'm a childbirth educator, birth doula, and lactation counselor, and have been passionately supporting growing families since 2009. This show is here to lessen your overwhelm on the journey into parenthood by equipping and encouraging you with current, best evidence info and soulful interviews with parents and birth pros. Please keep in mind, the information on this show is not intended as medical advice or to diagnose or treat any medical conditions. Did you know you can sign up to receive email updates whenever a new episode goes live? Visit birthmattersshow.com to join our podcast community. And when you're on that list, you'll not only get podcast updates, but also other supportive offerings like support groups, workshops for expectant parents, new parents, as well as birth workers. It's also how we spread the word whenever we have birth class reunions. Now, here's a little bit about today's story. Donna and Sandy today will share their 7-year-old daughter's birth story. They had hopes for an unmedicated birth and investigate switching from a hospital OB to a home birth midwife toward the end of pregnancy. Ultimately, due to it being so soon before baby was coming, they end up sticking with their OB despite increasing signs of misalignment. Fortunately for them, they labor at home and arrive at the hospital just in time for pushing and the birth of their daughter, who was born en caul, or without the bag of waters releasing. You'll hear some reflections on pregnancy, birth, and parenting from Donna and Sandy, specifically from the perspective of parents who have a very dedicated meditation practice and who are on the older end of the reproductive spectrum, as is often the case for New Yorkers. So let's jump in. Today, I am super excited to have students from 8 years ago, Donna and Sandy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for having us, Lisa.
I'm so excited to see you again. I don't think I've ever had anyone on the show that took my class so long ago. Lots has happened since then, but we reconnected on social and I saw you making an exciting career announcement, and it just brought to mind a flood of memories, good memories of, well, I don't want to spoil your birth story, but you'll share one particularly cool aspect of it. And I was really surprised and delighted when you said, yes, I'd love to share my birth story. I didn't think you'd be interested this many years later, 8 years later. But anyway, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm Sandy.
And I'm Donna, and we gave birth in June of 2015 when we were living in New York City. We spent 2 years in the city after that, and then we moved up to Western Massachusetts.
And you have a very dedicated meditation practice, correct?
Yes, we both do.
Yeah, maybe you'll figure that into your story, but I'd love to hear from that perspective how that played into your approaches in pregnancy and or with the birthing process. So why don't we start with anything you'd like to share about how pregnancy went for you? If you'd like to share anything about the conception, how did you prepare for your journey into parenthood?
Well, it's fair to say pregnancy was not on our radar when I got pregnant. And I was 41 at the time, so I was a little bit older and knew nothing about pregnancy at all. Just for 41 years, never even thought about it. So when we got pregnant, it was a little bit of a shock. And you know how I guess a lot of women have it all planned out even before they get pregnant. They have their doctor picked out, they have the hospital, they have clothing picked out, everything ready. But we didn't have any of that. So we were starting from scratch. we were also in the midst of a move. We had to renovate a house in Philadelphia, so it was a little chaotic. And the pregnancy, I guess, was our first priority. But for me, I was like, I don't have time to research a whole bunch of doctors in New York City and things like that. So we asked a good friend of ours who was born and raised in Brooklyn and had a baby in Brooklyn. And I just said, give me the name of your doctor. So she did. And so that's who I started off with, just to kind of confirm the pregnancy. And I think at that time we were kind of open as to whether or not we wanted to get a midwife, if we wanted to do a home birth, whether we were going to stay with this doctor. We weren't thinking we were going to stay with this doctor, but at the time it was just what convenient for us. Well, it kind of got complicated, as you know. So we never did switch from our doctor, even though we wanted to. We did look into like a midwife or two, but we felt like it was really complicated. So we ended up staying with this medical doctor just out of convenience, I'd say, right? And this doctor is a very beloved doctor in Brooklyn. She is known for performing miracles in the delivery room. And one time we ran into a couple in her waiting room that named their baby after her. Like, she was just really beloved. But I guess we can get into a little bit more about that relationship a little bit later. But in terms of preparing, anything that you want to?
No, we took Lisa's class.
Well, that was towards the end. I think we both just try to really take care of ourselves. We try to eat really healthy. We did a lot of yoga and walking. In terms of the meditation practice, at that time, we were both practicing 2 hours a day. And I think for me, like at the time, the meditation I was focusing on was on sensations and paying attention to sensations. And I think I didn't realize this until after I gave birth, that I had a really high pain tolerance because of it. And I attribute that to the 2 hours a day of meditation while I was pregnant.
And didn't you went on a 9-day retreat, I believe. We had emailed, you gave me a heads up that if you don't hear from me, this is why. Anything you'd like to share? Do you remember? I know it's been a long time, but.
I remember exactly. I actually did a 10-day retreat when I was about 4 months pregnant. And then I did a 9-day retreat, like when I was 8.5 months pregnant. And those were wonderful. They were so special. The center that I went to took very good care. And it was just such a bonding time and such a time just to slow down and connect to the body and the pregnancy. So I don't think everyone would have the nerve to do that, but I had been taking courses for years before that. So these weren't my first ones. So I knew the ropes, but they were really wonderful. They were just times that I really cherish.
And were those with people you knew, or was it mostly strangers or all strangers?
Both. So when you take a course, there's some people who've been there before, you'll run into them again. And there's also new people as well.
I love it. What a great thing to do for life, but especially in such a sacred time as pregnancy, where you really need to make more space as much as possible to sit, be mindful, connect with the baby, connect with your body.
Yeah, and definitely the one I saw when I was 8.5 months, when I really felt Isa kicking around, like I really felt the most from her, because I'm paying attention, right? And I'm quiet and I'm slow, that I'm really noticing her kicking around and communicating with me in different ways.
I also was a hypnotherapist in the past, and we did a hypnotherapy session. And in that hypnotherapy session, the goal was we had some real concerns about being moved into unnatural processes of whether it be cesarean or whatever the case may be. We wanted to have a natural birth. So that hypnotherapy session was about being in that situation where the doctor tested us when we came in and that we were fully dilated. And that was the hypnotherapy session was all around bringing that to fruition through Donna's mind and through my mind. And when she did go in that night, she was fully dilated. So that was nice.
And I think you did that, like the hypnotherapy session on me at least once or twice a day for the last month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was one main session. And then I also did some what they call locking it in, that vision.
There was one other thing that we did that I credit and I tell every expecting mother about, and that's the vaginal massage. What is it called? The perineum?
Yes, perineal massage.
Yeah. Which I always tell mothers, make no mistake, it is not a massage. It hurts like you would not believe. But I credit that because I didn't rip, I didn't need stitches. And I was 10 days overdue. And I think we started it pretty much at the beginning of June because I thought I was due like June 16th. So I thought we were going to do it for about 2 weeks, but we ended up doing it for almost a whole month. So, Sandy did it for me. And like the first couple of times it really hurt, but as time went on, you could feel that the lubrication, you could feel the opening. And I truly think that's the reason why the birth was so easy. So highly recommend doing that.
Yeah.
Great. Good tip. Yeah. A lot of pelvic PTs recommend that too. The main thinking is getting your mind ready for like breathing into it and relaxing into it, because it's not the first time you're feeling that sensation. That's at least one of the reasons why we think it can really help.
And also it just stretches you out, right? And it also makes everything very soft, and you could it's lubricated, right? It's easy.
Yeah. Great.
So Isa was born in the sac, and Donna didn't have any stitches. So yeah, the actual birthing was...
The actual birth itself, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Well, anything else about your pregnancy that you wanted to share before we go into the birth story?
What else? I was 10 days overdue, which is a challenging 10 days because the doctor wants to see you like every single day. And in addition, everyone's calling you and texting you and asking you, and you're like, leave me alone. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I remember that those last 10 days, I was getting a little antsy and I was trying almost everything possible. Spicy food, eggplant, the homeopathic stuff. I think we tried like everything under the sun to try to get her to, but again, who knows? When she was born, she was only 7 pounds, 1 ounce. So I guess that's when she was ready. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the pregnancy I think that's it.
Yeah.
And was there anything in particular that was helpful in birth class that you learned? You did mention spinning babies and maybe you'll speak to that in your birth story, that you used some of those techniques. And maybe, I don't know if you heard about that in birth class or if you found that elsewhere.
I don't even remember what spinning babies are.
It's been so many years. Sure. That's understandable. That was just me going back to your initial email right after you gave birth and saying that you heard about the spinning babies techniques in class and that you used some of those. They're largely some yoga positions and things that really are to balance the body and help the baby kind of settle into a nice position or rotate in labor.
No, I think for me, your class, really the main thing, of course, was it's very educational, of course, and helping us have the kind of birth that we want. But I think for me, like looking back now, it was really the confidence building that you could do this, right? Sandy and I we started out in birth class at the public hospital, and we just left there feeling very sterile, very unsupported, I think someone said that those hospital classes, they just teach you how to be good patients and make things easier for the doctors and nurses, right? Like it's not really empowering. Do you remember that class?
I don't remember that.
We felt very disempowered, actually. And that's when Sandy got on the horn and said, let me go find another class. And Sandy's the one who did the research and found your class. And we're like, okay, well, this class is in Astoria. We're in Brooklyn. It costs money. This one's free. I'm like, but this is important. We're doing it. And we did. And we're so glad that we did. We just felt very supported and nurtured. Again, it was a confidence builder that we had the skills, we had the techniques, we had the ability to do this the way that we wanted. We would never have gotten that from the hospital class at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the part of the class that really stuck out for me was you prepared us for the hurdles we would face in having a natural birth. So I think we were very prepared. We were prepared to do what it took to not get onto that course where we wouldn't have a natural birth.
And the biggest one that stands out to me as I review your birth story is laboring at home for almost the entire labor.
Exactly.
Biggest, best strategy when giving birth in a hospital in avoiding unnecessary interventions. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for comparing and contrasting hospital classes to out of hospital classes, because a lot of people don't realize that. And hospital classes, not always, but generally teach you how to be a good patient. Just tell you, this is how it is at our hospital, and don't tend to be helping you learn to advocate for yourself and have the healthiest birth possible.
I think we went to one class, and then I don't think we went back, did we? Maybe two, maybe at the most
only
two.
Went to one because I don't remember what it was.
But at the very most, it was like, these are the different pain medications you can ask for. This is It's like, thanks. Yeah. So anything else about the pregnancy? I think that's it. We were lucky. The bulk of the 9 months was in the summertime. So weather was good. And yeah, I don't think anything else pregnancy wise. I had a very healthy pregnancy. The first trimester, I had some morning sickness for about, I think, 6 or 8 weeks. And then everything, knock on wood, was pretty smooth. Second trimester felt great. Third trimester, usual, felt great, a little bit tired and got really big. But other than that, that was it. Like we didn't have any issues. Oh, I got dehydrated once, but that was it.
During the course.
Yeah.
And was there anything you want to share in terms of the emotional adjustment to this being a surprise?
I spent the whole 9 months adjusting to it, like getting used to it. Even after Issa was born, I remember for a long time, maybe, I don't know, 6 months, looking at her and be like, what is whatever they are.
Sandy, any reflections for you in terms of the surprise?
I think I transitioned into finding out very easily, but of course, it's easy when there's no baby on the scene. The bigger transition for me was, of course, when she came along. And that was pretty big.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That first 3 months was extremely difficult. And even the first 2 years was actually still quite a challenge, Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest life changes you'll ever go through. And it's nonstop. It's all around the clock.
It certainly helped moving up to Western Mass. Once we moved up here at the 2-year mark, things were much easier to do. Like we took Issa to play groups and different support things around this area, and even taking her to the store or wherever. New York is really a challenging place to have a baby if you're not rich, and have a nanny. If you're doing it all yourself, there's a lot of challenges. Yeah, that's what we found anyway.
Sure. Yeah, that's why we lose people. We live here in New York City,
Westchester County and New Jersey and Connecticut and Long Island. That's why they do it, right?
All the time. Yeah. Great. Well, unless there's anything else you'd like to share on pregnancy, feel free to start wherever in terms of your birth story in the weeks leading up, or actually it's starting. Up to you.
Okay. So yeah, leading up to the birth, again, had a pretty healthy pregnancy, and I was due June 16th. And up until then, we did everything we could to try to educate ourselves and be ready for a natural birth. That's really what we wanted. And I remember talking to you, Lisa, towards the end of our class, that we were becoming increasingly dissatisfied with our doctor and the protocols there. And our last class, or the second to the last class, we discussed with you whether or not we should try to go for a home birth. I don't know if you remember that or not. And you said that we would be perfect candidates for that.
I do. Yeah.
And of course, we considered that in the beginning, but not knowing anything about pregnancy and giving birth, we bought into the idea that we were too old to do that. I was 41. I'm high geriatric pregnancy. Like we bought into that we couldn't do it. And not having a kid before, like it scared us. Like, how can we have a home birth? So we quickly, this is probably 2 weeks before I was due, so early June, started to look into having a home birth. And we did find one woman that was willing to do it. However, we needed to do a lot in those 2 weeks. We needed to switch our insurance. We needed to get our medical records. We needed to buy a whole bunch of supplies. And I remember talking to the midwife. I said, is there just one place that we can just order all these things? And she's like, unfortunately, no. We literally have to go to like 10 different stores to buy all the supplies that are requested for this home birth.
Oh, maybe because it was so last minute, because there are kits you can order, but I wonder if it needs more lead time, maybe.
Now, looking back, we didn't give birth till June 26th. We would have had time. If we would have known she was coming June 26th, we would have done it. I think we would have gone for the home birth. We were due June 16th. So I think we had like 2 weeks. And we're like, okay, what if she comes early? So we decided not to go with the home birth and decided to continue with our medical doctor, even though we became, and Sandy, maybe you remember this a little bit better, why we became increasingly dissatisfied. I know we gave her a birth plan. We wrote that up and gave it to her. I don't know if she him and hawed around that, I think, or wasn't really supportive of it, but something started to change in our relationship with the OBGYN that we had. Do you remember that, Sandy?
Well, just as one example was I wanted to become a little bit more of a participant and actually maybe catch the baby. And she said, no, that's not possible. So of course, looking back, of course, they had protocols and but whatever.
But if we were home, we probably could have caught Isa.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yes, you said yes, you can. When you're at home, you can catch the baby.
It's often default in many cases for a midwife to just say, reach down and bring your baby to your chest, or if partner wants to do it, they're much more supportive in that birth setting. Right. Sometimes hospital policy, I'm doing air quotes, hospital policy will like restrict a provider, or many providers are just not comfortable with it. Occasionally you'll find a hospital provider, particularly hospital midwives, who will be supportive of that.
We had our suspicions that it was also her ego. And that was kind of cemented in the process, in the birthing process, the night of the birth, that it was very much ego based.
Because there are other things that we requested that she didn't honor. We requested that Sandy cut the umbilical cord. They didn't honor that. The OBGYN just snipped it. We were getting clues that this maybe wasn't a match for us, but at that point we were too late. So we were kind of just resigned that we're just going to have to go through this, and we're going to have to just do our best and stand our ground. And Sandy did a lot of reading. I remember there was a book or something that we read, that we both read, to be very prepared. And so we were 10 days late. And during those 10 days, increasingly having to go to the OBGYN every day for blood work and this, they are pretty exhausting. And so finally, Isa was born on the 26th, which was a Friday morning at 2 a.m. So that Wednesday night before, the 24th, around 9 o'clock at night, I started going into labor. And I think we had just seen our OBGYN that day. I think so. So it was like 9 o'clock at night. We were going to sleep. And I said, Sandy, I think I'm going to labor. Like, okay, this is it. Like, let's both try to get some sleep and see what happens. So I was in labor that whole night, nothing really painful. Like, it didn't feel like anything, just a couple contractions in my uterus, but it didn't hurt or anything. I'm like, okay, this isn't too bad. The next morning we woke up. Sandy called the doctor's office to let them know I was in labor, 8 or 9 a.m.
Yeah. And
they told us to get in right away. And we're like, no, we're not going to do that. We didn't tell them that. I think we just said, yeah, whatever, and hung up.
Good for you.
Yeah. And we stayed home that whole day. And then throughout the day, the contractions are really almost non-existent. And I remember I thought, I'm like, maybe those are false, or maybe, I don't know what's going on. And a friend of mine said, oh, that happened with somebody else for 4 days. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to go on for 4 days. So throughout the day, they were pretty much nothing. There were nothing all day. And then by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, this is Thursday now, they really started to pick up. And I went into the bath and I did some things. And then from 4 to about midnight, we labored at home. They were full-fledged, right? And then at that point, I don't know what made us actually decide to go. Why did we decide now is the time? Do you remember what?
Oh, I think we just had a sense. We both had a sense that it was
the
time.
Contractions were coming pretty consistent.
Yeah.
But I remember, Lisa, you saying that labor is never linear or as linear as it sounds like. Okay, for the first quarter, it's going to be every 10 minutes, and then it's going to be every 2 minutes. And it wasn't that. But I think we just had a sense that it was time, right? And this is midnight at this point. It's about 10.
It was a little after 11.
A little after 11.
By the time we got to the hospital, it was midnight.
Can we pause just for a second before you get to the hospital? I just wanted to ask you, while you were laboring at home, do you remember, were there specific things you were doing to help you cope with those waves you were having, the contractions?
I do remember, and I can't remember what they were. I did throw up a lot. Do you remember I threw up a lot?
Well,
you said every 5 contractions in your written story.
I ate dinner.
And then after you ate dinner, you started throwing up.
Yeah, threw up. I do remember some things. I remember you helping me in some ways. I can't remember exactly what you did. It was, for me, it was a big blur. Sandy was much more obviously coherent. So he has a lot of a different memory than I do.
That day was a very challenging day. I think men grow up with the idea, okay, the first sign of contractions, rush off to the hospital. That's all the shows to tell you that, to do that. And so, but by the time I remember, I was cooking dinner for that evening. And I just remember just feeling so stressed. And I just was and I didn't have a really great sleep that previous night, the night that Donna had gone into labor. And I just I just stepped away and I was like, Donna, I have to go lay down. And I would lay down and actually went to sleep for an hour or two, because I was just really at that point, I kind of hit a wall and didn't know really what to do. So then when I woke up, Donna was in the bath and I was more rested then. And then I was able to get back on track.
This was late afternoon by this time.
Oh yeah, no, they were early evening now. Yeah.
Yeah. So from 4 o'clock to 12, it was full on labor with Sandy there with me helping. And again, as my water never broke, so we're waiting for that. So we really have and this is the first time, and it's painful, but I'm not doubling, like it's not that bad. So I don't even know where I am in this labor. Like I have no clue where I am, right? The water hasn't broke. It's painful, but manageable. I think I walked down to the car, right? Sandy drove. I laid in the back seat. It was about a 20-minute drive at that time of night, right? I think I moaned the whole way there. Did I moan the whole way there?
Yeah, there was some moaning going on.
We called my friend who met me at the hospital. So
and I went and parked the car.
So Sandy went to go park the car. My friend helped me in the hospital. And by that, I'm moaning and they bring me the wheelchair. And whoever brought me in, it was a nurse, whatever. She's like, "Oh my, you're really in pain. You must be having a girl or something." I think she said that to me. You weren't there at the time because you were parking the car. So then they checked me in with my friend while Sandy was parking the car. And I don't really remember what happened. They obviously admitted me. I don't know when they told me my dilation. Were you there when they told me?
Yeah, I came and we sat down.
That was the triage room? Is that the triage room? Okay.
They said
that I was 10 centimeters dilated, which is fully dilated. Because we had no idea. For all I know, I could be 2 centimeters, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't know. So we were obviously so happy about that. So they admitted us into the room and I needed absolutely no medical intervention. I didn't even have an IV put in my wrist at all. And I didn't have any medication, nothing. The nurse came in at one point and asked me about whether I wanted pain medication. And I said no. And I remember her leaving, okay, well, what do I do now? What's my job?
Used to that.
Right?
There's a lot of that going on.
It was a lot. And we're fine. And so then this is one part that gets a little bit... So our doctor shows up. So we get there a little after 12, I guess. And again, we gave birth at 2:40. So I only labored in the hospital for about 2 hours. Our doctor arrives.
And well, yeah, she arrived. She's not really impressed. And we're looking for some direction, of course.
Well, first of all, she got mad at us for waking her up, that she had to come back to the hospital. She had just gotten home.
Yeah. Keep that to yourself, lady.
Well, we called her at 8 a.m. So she knew. We called her office to tell her we're in labor. So she had to know we were going to give birth sometime during that day. And they never called us to check in. If I were her at 5 o'clock when I'm ready to leave, I would have called my patient to say, "How are you doing?" So out of selfishness, to figure out whether I should go home or not. She never checked in on us the whole day after we called them that morning. So
she was quite annoyed at having to come back.
So she was annoyed about that. And then I didn't feel like I was making progress. And so we knew that the gravity, standing up, squatting would be a way that we would want to try to make some progress. And she wouldn't help us. Yeah,
we were looking at her okay, what do we do now? And I actually said that to her. Okay, so what do we do now? And she said, "Well, you're the experts.
You know everything.
You know everything.
You'll do it your way.
You do it your way." And we're like, okay. Basically, we really need some guidance here because we've never had a child before. And so I really had to kind of, with hat in hand, kind of just say, "Please help us."
And so we eventually gave birth on my back.
The way she wanted.
Right.
The doctor wanted. I apologize.
Yeah.
The doctor wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, the actual birth itself was fantastic. I didn't even need an IV. I didn't rip. I didn't need a stitch. She just came right out in her sack. I didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but Sandy, of course, got to see it. My friend who was with me got to see it.
There's no picture. Oh, no.
I know. We should have had my friend video.
I was a little bit, put off by the whole thing. It kind of entered into a surreal kind of experience for me. Donna was very I don't know if Donna remembers this, but she was wanting to please the doctor because she kind of, well, you guys do it yourself. I think after that, I kind of slipped back into mode of what the heck is going on? And Donna slipped into, I want to please the doctor mode.
Well, I just want to get this baby out.
And that's very common when we have oxytocin surging through our bloodstream. It often puts us into that mode, the fawn mode. instead of fight or flight, it's fun. And we wanted all the love because it's oxytocin being the love hormone. We just want everybody to get along. And
I just want to have this baby.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that too.
Yeah.
So then after she was born, like I said, the doctor cut the cord. And actually, Issa had a very short cord. Do you remember that? It was like 3 feet long. It was super short. So because we didn't want her to cut the cord for a while, for a few minutes, but she had to because I don't think she would have even reached my chest. Do you remember that? The cord was that short. So immediately we put her on my chest and I nursed her immediately, right?
Yeah.
And she took immediately to nursing. So, and yeah, so that was the actual birth part. And again, the next 2 days in the hospital were very challenging. It started off, I should have known. So this is now 2:40 in the morning.
The next morning, the doctor did come in and apologize.
And said she was cranky or something. But so after I gave birth, though, I went to go take a shower and there was no hot water. I took a cold shower after giving birth. Yeah. It was not pleasant. It was not pleasant at all. And we wanted to leave like ASAP, but they insisted on all this testing, putting Issa in the incubator, all these things that we didn't even care about. And they made us do that.
Yeah, very shortly after she was born, they put her in the
incubator, the oven.
The oven. What do they call that?
The heat thing to get her temperature up.
We wanted her to stay with Donna. That would bring her core temperature up the most. But they took her, and we said we wanted her right back very shortly, and they took her for 3 hours. So, yeah. So that was kind of annoying.
Yeah. And then, so that
we were laying there for 3 hours. Of course, we couldn't get to sleep.
Right. And then, so that was Friday morning, early morning, and then all day Saturday was fine. I slept. Issa slept the whole night. We had a couple friends visit, and then Saturday night, Sandy went home to go get a good night's sleep, and I ran into some challenges. And I tried. I consulted the nurses, but I knew they weren't going to be helpful, and they weren't. All they were going to do was suggest that she go to the nursery and sleep, which I didn't want. There were 3 recommendations that they gave, which I knew they were going to do, and none of them were acceptable to me. 1, put her in the nursery. 2, put a binky in her mouth. And then there was a 3rd one. I can't remember what it was, but it was something else that like I knew I was going to go for. So basically, again, no help on how I can get this baby to sleep and how I can get some sleep. So finally I had to call Sandy at 4 a.m. and I need your help. Please come back. I don't know what to do. And they're not being helpful at all. So that was Saturday night. And then Sunday morning, we want to leave. What can we do to leave? And somebody had said they're not going to let you go until later in the day because then they can bill for a full day. So that's exactly what happened. They didn't let us go till Sunday at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So even though we were primed and ready to go, we could have gone Saturday afternoon, probably been happy. I didn't require any stitches or anything. So I didn't need any medical care. They did all this unnecessary testing for Issa, and then that was it. And we still got a bill for $15,000 from our insurance. Which
you gotta be kidding. I don't know why I'm saying you got to be kidding because it happens all the time and it's
for nothing. I mean, for a couple hearing tests. And again, I didn't even have an IV or any medication or a cesarean or anything. And it was $15,000. Sandy being from Canada couldn't believe it. He was like, oh, it costs $2,000. Of course, our insurance covered it, but I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Yeah. Did they tell you at all why they took Issa away from you for so long?
Right after the birth, they said her temperature was down and they wanted to bring her temperature up. So that's why they took her.
And then we said an hour, but it ended up being 2.5 hours.
Yeah, we said we wanted her back in an hour, but it was a bit close to 3 hours by the time they got back.
Goodness, I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, so the medical side was not great. The actual birth itself and all that and her delivery was perfect. But being in the hospital, the medical...
They kept coming in and waking us up as well. That first...
Very disruptive to rest.
Yeah, bringing me slippers that I didn't ask for.
And then waking us up to ask, do you want slippers? No, we want to sleep.
Right? Please let me sleep.
Now,
Can't you ask that another time when I'm not trying to sleep?
I will say that I have heard other parents say that they appreciate that level of attention, that not everyone was as independent as we are. Mm-hmm. Some people don't even want to leave the hospital. They're so scared to be alone with their baby, right? Mm-hmm. Some parents have said, I really appreciate, I wanted the nurses there all the time. So I get that, but we were not one of them. They wanted them to leave us alone.
Yeah. I also just want to voice that I'm glad that your OB apologized later. And I'm really sorry that you were treated that way, so close to this sacred time of your baby's birth in the midst of that. And I feel like I've gotten to know you well enough to have a sense of you are not people to, I don't know, have created a dynamic that asked for that in any way. Not that anybody
We
ever
weren't
necessarily
pushing at
asked for
all.
it, but yeah, I mean, do you feel like there had been an interaction at all that predisposed her to treating you like that? I
No,
wouldn't
I
think
think
so.
it goes back to what Sandy was saying, and what I was saying is that she's this beloved miracle doctor, and she had no role. The way we did it, she had no role, and she didn't like that. She's used
I heard
to
her
being the
ego.
hero. She's used to saving every baby that's premature or has a cord around their neck or whatever. And everyone's like, if I was a doctor, you'd be my dream case. I didn't have to do anything.
Right?
I was like,
Yeah.
literally catch the baby.
Mm.
But I think that just kind of wasn't good enough for her.
But Lisa, it was becoming apparent as we, like Donna mentioned earlier, as we got closer to the birth, that energetically, probably we weren't a really great fit. And yeah, so she was starting to feel that we were not
Just going to listen to her,
just
worship
her and do everything that she said, and to the nth degree. That we were, like Donna said, perhaps a little more independent, and wanted to have that was a really big focus for us to have a natural birth. And that was not something that was really the priority for her, I don't think.
And of course, I think you called it, Lisa, and everybody else called it. At 38 weeks, she started to talk to me about when to induce. It's like, give it a rest. I said, we were not going to talk about that until 42 weeks. We're not even broaching that topic until 42 weeks.
Yeah.
But 38 weeks, she started.
Yeah, she started pressuring us on that path as well. So we were starting to realize that wasn't perhaps as good.
We really had to stand our ground. And I guess she probably perceived that as difficult or uncooperative.
Yeah, they're used to their patients just being like, okay, you're a doctor, you know best. Whatever you say, doctor.
Yep.
So yeah, that makes sense. But I commend you for standing up for what you felt was best and what you wanted and preferred and felt like was healthiest for you and your baby.
Yeah, that did happen, not without the pushback and not without the terrible hospital experience afterwards. It's done. Looking back, if I would have known then what I would have known now, we would have obviously gone for the home birth from the very beginning with the midwife. But we didn't know. I was old. I was old by pregnancy standards. We didn't have a lot of time. We didn't have a lot of knowledge about this. We didn't have the confidence. But if I would have known, we would have just not even stepped foot into the OB's office, probably.
Oh, a fairly random question just popped into my head. Do you happen to remember when Issa was born and caul? Did they take surgical scissors to open it? She
actually took. I think she took her finger, and ripped at it, and did it that way.
I didn't see a thing, so he had to.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. She took her finger and ripped at it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Probably over a Chuck's pad, because then it's like fluid going everywhere.
Yeah.
So how long was Issa out before?
She was I would say 3/4 of the way when she did. Yeah, just barely out when the doctor did that. Yeah.
Is there any it's supposed to be very rare, I know, but medically it doesn't mean anything, right? That might have been another reason why I didn't rip or whatever too, right? If she was lubricated the whole time in the sac, right?
Perhaps. Yeah. It could be. Theoretically.
Yeah. It's there's not parts coming out. There's just
smooth.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of a circular thing that's coming out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We hardly ever see it in a hospital birth. It's less rare in home births and birthing centers. And that's largely because in hospitals, they almost always will artificially rupture the membranes in the pushing stage if they haven't spontaneously ruptured by then, almost always. So that's especially cool that you had an uncalled birth in a hospital. Yeah. Great. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share about your journey in parenting since then, or anything?
I guess the first couple of weeks, again, I didn't have any stitches or anything, so I was quite lucky. I remember a couple of things that helped is a wrap around the stomach to try to kind of keep things in. That was very helpful. But I think I recovered pretty quickly. Nursing was not a problem. Issa latched right away. The only slight issue we had was she had a little bit of thrush when she was 3 weeks old. But other than that, nursing, quite lucky there too. Never had to bring in a lactation consultant or anything. I think I went to a couple La Leche groups or whatever for information and support, but never had any issues with that. So that was good.
Well, probably I would recommend for people to start their baby on the bottle as soon as possible if they're showing that they're natural latchers. Because what happened then is that later on that became a big issue, because every time Donna left,
she wouldn't take the bottle.
And then it was kind of stressful for both her and me then to be home while Donna was going to a class or whatever. And it was stressful to Donna too, because Donna couldn't leave for any more than 3 or 4 hours at a time.
When did we introduce the bottle? Like 3 weeks? Is that what we...
It was at least 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think we introduced it until we pretty well had to. And then that was too late then.
Often, what we lactation professionals usually recommend is wait until breastfeeding is going well, which is usually like the first 2 to 4 weeks, but then try to introduce a bottle before 6 to 8 weeks, because often if you wait longer than that, many babies will just reject it and it'll be a lot harder to introduce it.
Yeah, I think we started it before 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, we did. I think of like 3 or 4.
But
every baby's different.
Yeah, but she just wouldn't have it. So and everything worked out fine in the end. But again, it just added to the adjustment, because Donna was less independent. I was less independent because, of course, Donna was on a tether then, because we couldn't let her go too far or too long.
I remember Sandy and Issa just like following me around Brooklyn at work, like meeting me in different places.
Yeah, like we'd have to go down to the university.
But we were lucky that we could do it, you know? We were quite lucky.
Yeah. I didn't have a full-time job. I guess if we had had a full-time job, we would have perhaps started earlier or whatever. But that's why I probably would recommend that, to start as soon as possible to get them on the bottle. I'm trying to think if there was something else. Oh, so Issa was a very light sleeper. And so we finally started using, we use pink noise now. You can use white noise or whatever you want to use. We use pink because we did the research, and pink noise was supposedly the best.
Yeah, that's what I always recommend. And that's what Brian and I sleep too. Yeah.
And but she was a really light sleeper, so that was a bit challenging. So, and we still use the pink noise till this day, because now, of course, I can't go to sleep without pink noise now. So yeah, but she can't either. Yeah. So then you can have guests over, you can have, things can happen. You can do the dishes while she's sleeping. But before that, we were just like, again, we were just walking on eggshells the whole time. We couldn't have anybody come during her nap time. And it was just, again, you just want to make your life as smooth as possible. And pink noise is just one of those things that, that allows you to do that. Yeah. And we would have taken her out more. The first month, it felt like
trapped.
That we were, when you're in jail for, what's that term called? When you're
like house arrest?
House arrest. We felt the first month, it felt like we were under house arrest. I mean, we did not leave. And that's just not healthy. So get out as much as you can. Because looking back, the first 3 months were challenging, but they were challenging a lot because of some of the things that we were a little late getting to. So, yeah, that would have got us out more and give us maybe more perspective. Because when you're, all those things that I'm talking about they're all limiting your perspective, and everything becomes so big because you're all in this little small space together in New York, and it's a whole new experience. And you have a lot of resistance, mental resistance around what's happening, because you used to have so much freedom and now you don't. And if you can make it as easy for yourselves as possible, then do so. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask if you did any baby wearing. Did that?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Ergo. We bought all different types. We bought like the Ergo is what worked the best, but what's the other one called? It's like it looks like almost like a hammock.
Like a ring sling, maybe?
Yeah,
yes,
ring sling.
We had that.
That's what it was.
No, we Ergo'd that kid till she was 2 years old.
But she didn't like to look, because she always wanted to be facing out. So, but when I turned her in, she fought against it for a couple of minutes, and then she would go to sleep. But we ergoed her right up until, well, she was actually, we were still in Western Mass when we stopped.
That was 2 years old.
Almost 2.5 when I stopped.
Wow, you have better backs than I do. I got to like 14, I think it was about 14 months. And I was like, oh, no matter the carrier. I tried several different ones and I just was like, I can't do this anymore.
She likes to be close to us. Like she didn't like the stroller as much. She wanted the Ergo.
What was harder in our backs was that she didn't like to crawl. and she liked to hold our hands. So at 11 months old, she would
doing the hand holding, right?
She would, anytime she wanted to move, she would hold her hands up. We would bring her up and we would walk her to the next place and then put her down. And that was harder on our backs at that point.
Because she didn't walk independently until she was 16 months old. So that was 5 months of doing that.
Yeah. That was a happy day.
That's a long time.
When she started walking. People have often said, oh, I'm not looking forward to her. We were so happy. That was a big game changer for us when she started walking around on her own.
We just spent our 5 months hunched over, her holding our fingers, walking.
Ow. Yeah. So the ergo was better. Yeah. And I have friends who shifted to back carries and carried for like 5 years. And I'm like, that's awesome. More power to you. I love that you did that. And that didn't quite work for me. Great. Well, any final tips or insights, pieces of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners with? You just gave some good ones.
Well, also, I'm sure this is one that everyone's heard, that today's solution is tomorrow's problem.
Yeah.
You've heard that, Lisa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, but you do what you need to do to get through that day and then deal with it later. Like, so for example, if nursing is a way to get your kid to sleep, then do it. But just know that in 3 weeks, it's going to be completely dependent on nursing and you're going to have to figure that out. But you do whatever you can to just figure it out and stay sane. But definitely today's solution is tomorrow's problem, or giving them a certain stuffy to soothe them. And then when you lose the stuffy, all heck breaks loose. You know?
Right. But they keep us on our toes.
Yeah, that was something that someone said to me that was like, it just so rang true.
Yeah. And don't be resistant to change. In every step of the way, the parents, they're like, they finally get into a groove and you can see that the child wants to change and you resist it and you resist it and you resist it and you do everything you can so that but at the end of the day, it's just a lot of waste of energy, because when the change happens, then you are able to find a new groove, which is better than the old groove. So if you can just listen to what your child wants, parent the child that you have instead of the child that you want to have, you can really make it easier for your child and for yourselves, because the new groove is always going to be better than the old groove, generally speaking, as long as you're...
And the child changes so quickly that there's no point in getting worked up about something other. The kid won't eat peas or whatever. Well, in 2 months, the kid will eat peas.
And that goes right up. And as they get older, we remember Donna and I had a lot of resistance around her doing her nap, because that's when we would get our nap as well. And we really fought long and hard for her to keep her nap. And she was getting more and more disgruntled about this. And then finally, we were like, well, she's at the age where we can nap and she could probably watch her children's programs and we'll just nap, and she was, and you can come to the bedroom door if you really need us, Isa. And that's what happened. She just watched her children's programs. We napped, and we still do that to this day.
Old parents, you know what I mean? So, like, I'm 50 and Sandy's 50, almost 57. We have a 7-year-old. So there's definitely some pros and cons to being an older parent.
Yeah.
Definitely some. And one of the cons is energy level. That's for sure. Like, there's a reason why biologically people have children when they're in their 20s, right? Not when they're 40 and 50.
But in today's society, like, we don't have to carry Isa from cave to cave, outrun the saber-toothed tiger. So in this day and age, I would certainly recommend, as long as you're physically fit, to have a child at a later stage. I see us kind of as a blend of a young parent and a grandparent. We know which battles to fight and which battles not to, but at the same time, some would say, I remember my father was saying that we gave her everything she wanted, but at the same time, we also, she has to eat for instance, her veggies. She has to eat her veggies before she gets dessert. So these are the things that are important to us, whereas younger parents might fight the wrong battles. So I think it's worked well.
Last thing I'd like to ask you is, in terms of your meditation practice, I was just curious, at your daughter's age now, do you meditate together as a family, or are you teaching her about those skills?
Yeah, great question. So obviously the first couple of years, I think Sandy and I's meditation practice definitely had a change, and still,
I bet.
But Sandy and I still meditate daily, and we don't meditate so much with her, but we have a little family group on Sunday mornings with another family about meditation and practice and things like that. And she really loves it. So that's kind of like, we call it Sunday school Bible study, but it's not really Bible study. So, but she's definitely introduced to it. She's actually said a few times over the past few months, I want to be a Buddha. I want to be a Buddha. So that's like her life goal, is to be a Buddha.
That's so cute. I love it.
Now, is she doing her things to become a Buddha? Well, that's another question.
Sure. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to reconnect and share your story this many years later. It's particularly special and treasured to me.
Yeah, lots of gaps.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and read that email that we sent to our class. But like I said, looking at it this many years later, the important things, the salient things are the ones that we remember the most, obviously, right? So, yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lisa.
So that was Donna and Sandy's story, and it was so nice to, hear from them after quite a few years. And I was very surprised that they wanted to share their story so many years later, but was very excited, and so nice that both of them were able to join. So thank you to Donna and Sandy. I'm going to briefly comment on 3 things that came up in today's story: perineal massage and a short umbilical cord, as well as some of the advice Donna got from a postpartum nurse in the hospital. First, perineal massage. In episode 19, you'll also hear a mama named Lauren share about her experience doing prenatal perineal massage. For anyone who's not familiar with what the perineum is, it's the tissue in between the anus and the vulva and vagina. It's the area that is most prone to tearing when giving birth. Perineal massage is intentionally stretching out the perineal tissue prenatally with some lubricant to both loosen up the muscle and skin tissue, as well as to get the birth giver some practice in getting used to the intense burning and stretching sensation, learning to breathe into it so that when baby's crowning at the end of the pushing stage, it's easier to relax into it. A lot of pelvic physical therapists and occupational therapists recommend doing prenatal perineal massage to their clients who are eager to do anything they can to prevent or minimize tearing. A partner could help with this, or you could do it on yourself, or there are even tools on the market that could be used. I'll include some info on this over in the show notes for today's episode, including the research around perineal massage, an instructional video, and a tip sheet over at birthmattersshow.com. Also, I wanted to mention that in the case of a short cord, another option instead of cutting the cord immediately would be to have skin to skin, but keep the baby as low on the torso as needed for as long as desired in terms of delaying the cord clamping. Within 5 to 30 minutes or so, the placenta will come out and baby can come up to the chest if the cord hasn't been clamped and cut before that point. And in hospitals, it usually will be done way before that. Just another option to consider for someone whose umbilical cord is on the shorter end. Regarding the postpartum nurse's recommendations, given that Donna had the goal of breastfeeding to go as well as possible, but also wanted to get some rest, both of the recommendations she mentioned that they gave couldn't have been more outdated or less evidence-based. Studies have shown that the mothers or postpartum parents do not sleep as well when separated from their babies as they would with baby in the room with them. This is why it's standard these days for hospitals to do what's called a rooming in, whereby babies stay with the birthing parent. And giving a pacifier to a newborn before nursing is well established is not recommended, as it can negatively affect baby's sucking form, could lead to delayed milk transition, low milk supply, or baby rejecting the breast. If you ever question specifically any lactation advice you're getting in the hospital, you can always ask if there's an actual IBCLC or lactation consultant available from whom you could get a second, more expert opinion. You could even ask about that prenatally. Okay, before we give you a sneak peek of the next story coming up, a quick word from our sponsor. Do you have your free Pack for Your Best Birth list yet? This is a great way to start some practical preparation for the big day and really start envisioning your ideal birth. All you have to do is go to birthmattersonline.com/pack to grab it. You'll also have the opportunity to take a free online mini course that will help you more thoroughly prep for a positively transformative birth. Again, that's birthmattersonline.com/pack. Now, here's your sneak peek of what's up next time.
That's when I made a post about not being okay because I wasn't okay. And I was like reaching for support. I was reaching for a village, for moms to encourage me and help me. I really wasn't okay. And I knew if I didn't reach out and I keep saying, I'm okay, I'm fine, no one's really going to help, and I needed help. I need people to know where I'm at emotionally, respect my boundaries, and just listen. And they did. And it just turned things around.
Donna shared the following after we met when I asked her if there was any sort of mantra or affirmation that she particularly loved. She wrote, "I always trusted and took comfort when I really internalized that our bodies know exactly what to do, to trust our bodies." So this week, consider meditating on the idea that your body knows exactly what to do both in growing your baby and in birthing your baby. Now, particularly given the fact that this affirmation is almost identical to the one Teresa shared in the last episode, I wanted to share that I know this idea can be a complicated topic for a lot of people, especially for folks who've experienced trauma, abuse, medical struggles, whether related to fertility, loss, or otherwise. Also not helpful for someone who is physically injured and or differently abled. So if this phrase doesn't resonate for any reason, another way to reframe it could be to trust the process. This week, I'll invite you to meditate on this idea of what it might look like to trust the process this week in pregnancy, while birthing, or while parenting. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Birth Matters podcast. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.